I present Gerald, the giant snail, with a town on its back, the first of my snail cities, and the first of my moving cities. Hey, it's Muffin. In today's video, I'll be sharing one of the most unique and fun builds that I've done in a while, which is this snail, where on top of its shell is built a small town, entirely self-sustaining, and protected from the environment. I intend on making many more of these moving cities, situated on the backs or on top of other animals. For example, one of the ones that I have in mind is to have a city on the back of a turtle, similar to the one in Avatar. I requested names for this snail in my most recent short, which was about this build, and House OOT got the most likes, with the name being Gerald. So here is Gerald the snail. Although Gerald isn't the fastest, his size is his main strength. It is his size also that provides the town at the top with its advantage over other towns. You'll notice that there are no defense structures in this town, and the reason is that they are not at a threat, in my opinion, from anyone. You see, the shell itself is strong enough to take on any bombardments from any cannons or whatever, and it is quite high enough to be out of reach for any arrows or any catapults of the sort. It's also too high when the snail is moving to be accessible from any land army, and with it being so high, the only threat are the birds that come, and with those birds not being predatory, at least to humans that live up top, there's no need for any defenses. One of the things that I do before building any town or any structure is to get some references together so that I know what I want to build and how I can scale things accordingly. Initially, I wanted to make a castle, kind of extending from the shell itself, but I felt that the color would not clash enough to be very distinct, and so I settled for a village up top. But then came the problem of selecting what type of build would it be, because this isn't on the main continent of my build, and so I wouldn't expect to see any shared architecture between my main continent and where this build is based. And so, I looked at places that I myself have travelled, and one of the things that stuck out to me was this build needs to be something that is limited in land size and has natural defenses. And the one that was quite aesthetic and fit these criterias was Hallstatt in Austria. I visited there last year, and the centre building in the town was a building that I quite liked and had always wanted to capture in Minecraft. And so I took that concept of having a city or a town that is protected by nature, and also small in its landmass, and I tried to replicate that at the top of this shell. The shell itself is quite multicolored, with the edges being either moss or some kind of grass or tree. And the reasoning for that is that naturally, with it being the edge, it would capture water. And over time, there would be moss and a buildup of dirt. And with birds flying over from various regions, you would have seeds dropping from their droppings. And as a result, you'd have some scattered trees here and there. And so that's the explanation of how there are trees on the back of this shell, even though there isn't any dirt or minimal dirt. Yeah, it's just that over time there's been a build up of dirt, and that dirt is either sustaining the trees and the roots have penetrated deep enough, or that the dirt has been cultivated, I guess, and used for farming. With it being a farming town, it is entirely self sufficient. And with there only being about 12 houses or so, it is a very small, tight knit community. And because of that, people here tend to help each other out and they share. And because of that sharing nature within themselves, we won't see any markets here because there is no function for a market, because there is nothing that isn't achievable by anyone else. Everyone does the same thing, that is just farming to survive. The only uniqueness is the presence of one windmill and this central church or temple like building, and both are serviced voluntarily. Although Gerald won the name, the second most liked name was Tom, and so I wanted to name someone Tom in this town, and it's meant to be the central priest or the leader of this area. An issue that arises from having limited dirt is that you have no burial ground. And so, again, I used Hallstatt as an example, where they had these crypts or mausoleums where they kept the skulls of those who had passed away as a remembrance by the families. And although Hallstatt did have cemeteries, I wanted to just use that small concept that they have of preserving the skulls and extend that to this town, so that when a villager does die, their body can be disposed of whenever the snail comes to rest, but they will keep the skull as a memory. The block palettes that I used here are quite straightforward, either being white clashing with the black roofs or some type of wood clashing with the darker roof. Now, for the builds themselves, I've used different types of timber, kind of to hint at the travel of Gerald, that as he passed over different regions, different people would come and join the town. And because they've joined it from their regions, they've had to make a house over there. And so they used whatever timber was locally available. Gerald is majestic. It is a snail city, or a snail town. And I want to make more of these snail towns. So stay tuned. I'll be sharing them here and there. Um, but they'll have different towns or different cities on their backs, or maybe even I'll make them a little bit more militaristic as moving army bases or something. But this one in particular is just a small town inspired by Hallstatt for the central building and some random buildings scattered around with a centre focus on agriculture to sustain themselves. Now you'll see that people keep popping out from the grounds over here, and that's because I put a spawner with a carpet on top. What I aim to do is try and figure out where the hubs would be. So either it's a market or some kind of church or temple, and that's where you should place your spawners with people, so that it makes sense for those areas to be populated. Gerald himself took about 5 hours to build. That is with world edit, which would have been impossible to build without it, pretty much. And the town itself took about 3 hours or so, but the whole process was streamed, so the live streams are available on my YouTube channel in the live stream sections. And come and watch the live streams if you're available, because you'll get a quick view of what I'm building and how I build it, and yeah, just come say hi. But here's a time lapse of about 4 hours of building in about 7 minutes. Feel free to skip through, I won't be narrating, but the overall procedure for creating the shape of the snail is captured here. Enjoy. what you'll notice is that the time lapse doesn't capture everything, and that's because my recording was too long and my storage was filled. But if you do like this build, please do leave a like. It also helps with the algorithm. Leave a comment if you have any suggestions for builds. Subscribe so that you don't miss out. But most importantly, have a good day.